Okay, I want to talk a bit about a specific criminal case from Bournemouth, Dorset. I'm going to try and make this video without being too emotional, although it's the sort of thing that really does make me angry, but I'm going to try and make the video as objectively as possible and not just have a rant. So basically, I'll put a video link to it as well. There's footage of this, and I will warn you in advance, if you're a very sensitive person, the footage is a little bit unsettling. Basically, it's about a guy who punched a man in broad daylight on the street, and that led to a blood clot in the man's brain, and he died. The victim was a 40-year-old who suffered from Asperger's syndrome. I won't read out the whole article, it's from the Daily Mirror, but I'll read out some bits which I think is important. Chris Bradley is reporting here. A 4-year sentence given to a man for the manslaughter of an Asperger's sufferer in an unprovoked attack was not unduly lenient, leading judges have ruled. Andrew Young, 40, died after being punched once by Lewis Gill in Bournemouth on November the 6th last year, that's 2013. His sentence imposed in February at Salisbury Crown Court was referred to the Court of Appeal by Attorney General Dominic Grieve, who argued today that it was not a proper reflection of the gravity of what Gill did. But 3 judges in London decided there should not be any change to the 4 years being served by Gill, 21, of Sutton in South London, who admitted manslaughter. Lord Justice Tracy said, "We readily understand that this is the sort of case that arouses public concern. If there are public concerns going beyond this case, then it may well be appropriate for the wider issue to be the subject of detailed consideration and consultation by the Sentencing Council in the future." During the hearing, Mr. Grieve outlined a number of aggravating factors in the case. He said the victim was vulnerable because he suffered from Asperger's syndrome, telling the court it is accepted that the offender had no means of knowing the detail of the victim's condition, but it was clear from the victim's unusual behaviour as seen in the CCTV that he was vulnerable. The punch was delivered with deliberation in a place where a great many members of the public were present. Mitigating factors included a guilty plea at an early stage, the expression of remorse, Gill's relatively young age, and the fact that the offence was not planned or premeditated. Mr. Grieve said this was a case of gratuitous, unprovoked violence. It was broad daylight when Lewis Gill delivered a very deliberate, forceful and vicious punch. I asked the Court of Appeal to look again at this sentence as I believed it was unduly lenient. They have taken the view that the 4-year sentence imposed on Lewis Gill should not be increased, and I accept their decision entirely. Well, there's a bit more to that, and I'll put you a link to the article. The Daily Mirror poll had it on a poll of public opinion. 51% thought it should be extended to a life sentence. 38%, which is what I clicked, thought it should be extended to 10 years. 7% thought it should stop with 4 years. Only 4% thought it should be less. Okay, so what you have here, the Court of Appeal, which I think is often makes disgraceful decisions in these cases, are saying they understand there might be public concern. What they don't seem to grasp is public anger. And it is simply a fact that there is widespread public anger about the state of sentencing in Britain. Now, it would be easy to just dismiss this as tabloids stirring things up, but it is a real case. This really did happen. And as much as I hate tabloid sensationalism, I also hate disproportionate sentencing. This is a case, and I'll show you the video, where a man's life has been lost because a mindless thug, in a moment's, and believe me, that's the polite way I'm putting it, in a moment's act of vicious aggression, this was totally unprovoked. He claims that he thought the man was trying to take his weapon. Well, he shouldn't have a weapon in the first place, but he also claimed there was a racial slur. But whatever way you look at it, this is clearly a thug who was acting on impulse, and he would have done it to anyone. This is clearly a dangerous individual. Now, I've said that I want to be objective about this. The only reason I wouldn't go with a whole life tariff is I don't think it's quite in the same category as an intent to kill. Nevertheless, it was an act of pure thuggery that has cost a man his life. 4 years does not reflect that. it should be an absolute minimum of 10 years. I think 15 years would be about appropriate. So basically this Court of Appeal is rubbing salt into what I would regard as justice and what most people regard as justice. And this is something that really drives people crazy. And it makes me absolutely infuriated that these idiot judges can sit behind their desk and think that that sort of sentence is fair. A man's dead, the perpetrator gets 4 years. These people have no comprehension of reality. And that's why I believe that we should have elected judges in this country. Judges who are voted in based on how the public feels that they're doing their job. At the moment, judges have no democratic accountability whatsoever. Now those who say that would be a lynch mob approach, no it wouldn't, because you would still have a court of law, you would still have due process, but you would simply have a situation whereby sentencing is more democratic. Now I'm not saying that sentencing should be solely on emotion, of course it shouldn't, but at the moment it doesn't reflect the gravity of the crime. Now Dominic Grieve referred that to the Court of Appeal, but he just accepted the decision. People blame politicians for this. I don't think that's entirely fair, because legislators don't necessarily, they will pass guidelines for sentencing, but in the end of the day it's the judges that make the sentencing. I think the main blame should lie with judges. They're the ones that make these stupid decisions. Now the fact that he admitted guilt early on, I don't think he should get any brownie points for that. Okay, it should be taken into consideration, but it's not a merit in itself. There's nothing noble about admitting that you've committed a heinous crime. Okay, it's better than if he's denying it, but I don't think he should be given any brownie points for that, as if it's somehow a virtuous thing. It's not. It's an insane situation, and this is the sort of case that really, it makes my blood boil as a human being, because my sympathy goes out to the man's family. And there's no deterrent in that whatsoever. These are the sort of crimes that really need to be targeted, especially since the victim was a vulnerable person. And hate crime against the disabled is a very big problem, and against people with mental health problems. So there should be a severe deterrent in this. I would say an absolute minimum of 10 years. Personally, I think an ideal sentence would be between 12 and 15 years. I'd stop short of a whole life tariff on the grounds that then you'd have worse crimes. In other words, say for example premeditated case we have torture, and if you're giving them a whole life tariff, then it's not equal to this crime. So what I'm saying is this is a disgusting crime, but I think whole life tariff should be for the worst of worst cases. This thug probably didn't intend to kill the man, but it was still an act of pure thuggery, and he's clearly a dangerous individual. His remorse isn't going to bring back the man's life, so 4 years is a shamefully lenient sentence. And I would say absolutely shame on that sentencing committee, the Court of Appeal. Shame on them for not making a judgment that reflects the severity of this crime. And I really believe we need a situation in this country where judges are elected, because quite frankly the vast majority of British judges seem to be utterly out of touch when it comes to basic fairness. And it makes my blood boil. I mean, are these people really living in a parallel universe? I accept that you cannot make judgments based solely on emotion, but that has to come into it, and the severity of the crime has to come into it. Now 4 years does not, in my opinion, and apparently most people's opinion, does not reflect the severity of the crime. 4 years should be the sentence for GBH not resulting in a fatality, but not for something that results in a man's death. It's disgusting, quite frankly. And those judges should hide their head in shame. As far as I'm concerned, they don't deserve to be in their position. Because anyway, let me know your thoughts. I'm not going to speak much longer because I will lose my temper. And anyway, I'll put a video link and I'll also put a newspaper link, and let you judge for yourself. I don't believe in the death penalty, just for the record. And I've made other videos about why not. I don't believe in revenge. But I do believe that sentencing needs to match the gravity of the crime. This is yet another example where it simply doesn't. 4 years as a consequence of a man's life being taken is not justice. It's not. It should be an absolute minimum of 10 years. Let me know your thoughts. And by the way, the thing about his age, he wasn't a child. He was an adult. It says he's 21, which meant he was 20 last year. He's an adult. It's completely a bullshit decision.